You are live. Welcome to the Shoy Show. It is Wednesday, June 3rd. The Knicks are going to be playing tonight, playing the Spurs. We want to win, okay? I just care about the series. I don't care about winning tonight. I don't care about winning the next game. I don't care about anything else other than winning tonight. Sorry. I care about winning the series. I don't care about anything else other than winning the series. Okay, some of my friends are saying, oh, the Knicks are going to sweep in 4 games. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. All right, let's roll in to our topics. The first is Lebanon. Here we are again. As always, Israel creating problems for people in the Middle East. But of course, we lose track of what's happening here because do you even give a shit? Do you care what's happening in Lebanon? I wanted to visit Lebanon. I can't now. I wanted to visit Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. Of course, I want to visit these places. They're filled with history. Yet we can't. Why? Because we've got other nations bombing the place. Thanks a lot, Israel. Appreciate it. Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah because Hezbollah operates inside Lebanon. All right, whatever. Sounds like another excuse. They're terrorists. All right, whatever. There's no way we can just talk to one another. Maybe Hezbollah is attacking Israel for a reason. Maybe we have fighting because both sides are being nasty to one another. Maybe this isn't actually one-sided. Maybe it's not just good guys versus the bad guys. That's what our governments want us to believe, right? And if you say anything against Israel, anti-Semitic. I'm so tired of that term. We have reached ad nauseum and exhaustion from that term. And that's a good thing. Because most of the shit that's said out there, I don't believe is anti-Semitic. People don't want war, especially the younger people, I think. The older people too, you know what? Let me not become ageist here. People don't want war, period. You're attacking Hezbollah because they're inside Lebanon. They're launching rockets and drones toward Israel. Why do you think they're doing that? They're defending Iran. And of course, Israel says that it cannot allow northern Israel communities to live under constant threat. But what is Lebanon living through right now? Because at various points during the conflict, more than 1 million people have been displaced inside of a country, roughly 5 to 6 million people. So you just displaced 20% of Lebanon in a highly densely populated area. For what now? Because you say so? Because we're just supposed to believe that, of course, you have the right here. You have the right of way, being Israel, of course, being backed by the United States. That's what I'm supposed to believe, I guess. Israel argues that it cannot allow northern Israeli communities to live under constant threat. What the hell is happening to the Middle East? So you continue striking inside Lebanese territory. You have no regard for human life. You're doing the same thing in Iran. You were doing the same thing in Syria. You've bombed Jordan. What are you going to bomb Egypt next? Which is where my family is from. So you displaced 20% of the people. 1 million people. Can you even imagine what 1 million people is like? I mean, look at some of these scenes. These people were going to school. They were going to the supermarket every day. All of a sudden, they have no home. They have to uproot their lives. They've got nothing but the clothes on their back. Can you imagine that? Let's try to imagine that for a second. Nothing but the clothes on your back, because that's a common expression that we hear. We read it in books. We see it in media. Nothing but the clothes on your back. One of my good friends, she's Lebanese. I want to visit Lebanon. She told me to go to Lebanon years ago. I regret not doing so. It's not that I can't. I mean, I can't right now, of course. Just what are we doing here? To what end? What is the end game here? I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand why Israel is always in the middle of conflict. Why it's always another country. It's always the next country. It's like it's always additive. Why isn't Israel the peacekeeper? This is peace through strength, right? That's what the United States says. So the military argument is that they are thwarting the threat, right? That's what Israel says. We're protecting our nation. We're protecting our interests. So therefore, we have to go into Lebanon. But if Hezbollah survives, which they always do, and Lebanon gets weaker, what was actually accomplished? Didn't you just bring about death, destruction, distress to 1 million people plus? To what end? Because war, it almost never solves anything. It's very easy to read it in the history books. And I do read a lot of history. I love history. I think we all do. But when you read about it, it's like the distinction that you make in your head is, okay, so then the United States dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, and then the United States won the war. Japan submitted, and the United States was victorious. It's very easy to read those couple of lines. It's very difficult to understand the damage and destruction because we don't feel it. And even if our ancestry was here to feel it, we wouldn't feel it here today, not in modern day, right? When you're reading history in the past, you'll never feel that. And I struggle to understand how Israel can be so cavalier. Because Hezbollah is not the Lebanese government, but the bombs are still landing in Lebanon. And they did the same thing in Gaza, right? They were trying to rid Gaza of Hamas, the militants. And what did they do? They leveled Gaza. They displaced millions. They killed 100,000. I mean, the crimes against humanity are too long a list as far as what occurred in Gaza. That same thing is happening in Lebanon today. That is what the topic is. And more so, what is the end game? I can't help but think every time we talk about the Middle East, and now that I'm older, when I was younger, it was very difficult to put things in perspective. And again, my family is Egyptian, but I'm really American. I'm born and raised in New York. It's very difficult for me to understand the dynamic, right? All of the elements that go into living in the Middle East. When you have such a powerful foe in Israel, or such a powerful nation in Israel being backed by the United States, and everyone around you feels helpless. The Arabs, they tend to joke, make a mockery of it, because there's 23 Arab nations. There are millions of Arabs. How many Arabs are in the world? I mean, 500 million people. There are 500 million Arabs in the world. What if we all of a sudden went to the Middle East and said, hey, Israel, fuck you. We're not letting this happen anymore. What if? Right? So I always go back to that idea. What if the Arabs actually stood together and said, Israel, enough is enough. We're tired of your shit. We're tired of you killing civilians. These are civilians. These are your people. Y'all, these are your neighbors right here. Come on. I mean, I don't want to overuse this expression, and I'm not. Life is too short. Do you really want to kill your neighbor? I mean, it's like, does somebody have to take one of these Israeli politicians or US politicians and just slap them in the face? Like slap some sense into them? What's wrong with you? I don't care if you want to quote the Bible. I don't care where you want to go with this. How on earth can you justify these actions? Now, of course, we did have another segment, just a couple days ago where we went into this, and the majority of Israel, they really do not agree with these military actions. They don't. That's what the numbers say. If you want to believe polls, right? If you don't believe in polls, I mean, that's okay, right? Because you have to discount most polls, I would say. But the polling suggests that the overwhelming majority of, I think the lowest we saw was like 55%, and it was upward to like closer to like 75% on multiple polls as far as military action ceasing in Gaza. Most Israelis do not want to keep fighting in Gaza. But of course, Israeli leaders have been blunt. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, this God-forsaken man, has repeatedly said Israel will continue acting against Hezbollah threats. And that's how you justify it, right? And nobody gives a shit because it's not your nation. It's not your land. So nobody cares. We opened up today's show by talking about the New York Knicks. That's what I'm focused on today because I live in New York City and I can have fun with my life. These people cannot. These people have no homes now, right? And even if you think this is, hyperbole, right? Because some people say, oh, a lot of Israeli soldiers, I've seen the IDF say repeatedly, don't believe the lies, don't believe the lies. Yeah, whatever, man. This is well documented. These are no lies. You can see it from space that Gaza has been leveled. There is no lying whatsoever. These are just egregious atrocities that are inexcusable. So there's nothing else to really be said. But what's stopping leadership? Nothing. And the way they perpetuate it is by saying things like this. We will not stop, we will not cease until all Hezbollah threats are eliminated. Other Israeli officials have warned that Lebanon could face even greater consequences if attacks continue. How much damage can a country absorb before the country itself starts breaking? Before there is famine? Then you have this happening. Israel destroying electricity centers, solar power generation for villages, taking a bulldozer to their infrastructure. What is going on here? Like, I'm supposed to, am I supposed to sit here and be like, yeah, Israel, yeah, get rid of the terrorists? You're killing people here. You're making their lives miserable. And it's so easy for them to do this, right? Just take away their resources. Who are you hurting here? Isn't the overwhelming majority of who you're hurting here the people, the civilians? Are politicians not asking themselves this? This is why when you see the New York City mayor, Zohran Mamdani, not show up to the Israel Day parade, it's this shit. This is why. The largest dam in Lebanon, which provides electricity and water to several cities, was destroyed by Israeli forces. To what end? I just don't understand the end game here. And of course, it's never a singular event, right? It's a series. It's a barrage of missiles. It's ongoing conflict. They are trying to bring Lebanon to their knees. And of course, that is a very real military strategy, right? You make the people suffer. It's not about killing the leadership, right? Back in the day, what did we read about in the history books? Go capture the king. If you go and capture the king, you behead the king, or you capture the king, you control the fate and the destiny of the people. It doesn't work like that anymore. They're trying to bring this nation to their knees. And then you got this fucking guy. This guy, man. Israeli Minister Ben Gvir. This guy is just, oof. And I'll just let him speak. This lunatic. Wanting to plunge Lebanon into darkness. We need, and I quote, we need to cut the electricity in Lebanon. This fucking guy.
אנחנו לא מוכנים להמשיך מערכות,
We are not ready to accommodate.
אלא
We will
רוצים
continue.
לנצח אותה. צריך להוריד את החשמל בלבנון,
We want to defeat them. The
לכבוש
electricity in
עד
Lebanon
הזערני,
needs to be turned
אפילו
off.
יותר מכך, ולחזור למלחמה עצימה. מדינת ישראל לא יכולה
The state of Israel cannot absorb, contain,
לספוג ולהכיל,
absorb and feed,
לספוג ולהכיל.
absorb.
אני אומר לראש הממשלה, תעצור את זה עכשיו,
I tell the head of the government
הפעם,
now, this
בכל העוצמה.
with all your might.
אנחנו
And that's the threat. Stop it, leadership, or we're going to destroy your people and we're going to make them miserable, as if they're not already miserable. So now let's look at this graphic. That's Lebanon up there on the top, Israel there on the bottom. And what are they doing? They've gone 20 kilometers in, plus more than 20 kilometers in. What's going on over here? These guys are essentially taking over the nation. Because what? Because Israel has a right? I mean, these were beautiful villages, were they not? The United States says their position, right, to, I think, allay any concerns here in the States, is that the United States says, we're trying to prevent a wider regional war. Isn't that that is always the headline? What am I, stupid? What am I, stupid? Hey, yeah, that's like my wife. She's going to step out every time. And I've caught her cheating 100 times. And she says the same thing to me every night. Hey, I'm going to go to the club with my friends and yeah. And then she comes back and she cheated on me. I mean, like, it's just like, how many times are we going to hear the same message before we start questioning things? And of course, there's a remedy here. Tell your damn politician, don't vote for your politician. It should be on the ballot. We should be telling our politicians, hey, listen up, moron. Because you work for me, right? You want to be elected? One of the things I am pissed off about is support to Israel. So we stand united. The United States should collectively get together as a coalition of politicians and say no to Israel. That doesn't mean that you're turning your back on all of the Israeli people. Again, the majority of Israelis do not want this war. It's not warranted. I think most people might have agreed that right after the October 7th attacks, there could have been retaliation. For it to go on this long is outrageous. But why aren't we looking at our politicians, Donald Trump, all the way down to the House of Representatives? Hey, what are you doing? I don't want to see you next to an Israeli flag going forward until there's a cessation of hostilities in the region and Israel comes out and absolves themselves of these crimes. And the only way to do that is to have their leadership actually admit guilt. Once that happens, once we actually see some level of accountability, maybe then we can move on as a nation. Maybe then we can start healing. I don't understand why you always have to rule with a big stick. Oh, you just don't understand foreign policy. That's what some people are going to tell me, right? Oh, you just don't understand shit. You're taking your freedom for granted. Israel has to do this. No, I'm asking, where does that leave Lebanon? That's what I'm asking. Where does that leave Syria? Where does that leave Jordan? Where does that leave the entire geography of the Middle East? There's a reason why this has been the most fought over piece of land in history. The most sought after. I'm just trying to understand the leadership's rationale. Or are you just going to lie to the public again and say, Lebanon is simply caught in the middle of a conflict it cannot control? If national security requires this level of destruction, what does success actually look like 5 years from now? Because it looks like we're going down the same road, right? All of these paths tend to lead down to the same road. You are creating an endless list of enemies in the region. Do you think people will ever forgive Israel for this? It's unforgivable. And then you blame kids. You like to say, "Oh yeah, look, their kids are terrorists. That's why we're killing them." Yeah. I just don't know what to say about this conflict. But we have to keep talking about it, and that's why we keep bringing it up. And it's very unfortunate that Lebanon is caught in the middle of this. But again, you have to ask what the end game is. Hey, politician. Hey, government. This war that you're starting, what the fuck is the end game now? I mean, we were asking the same thing, and we still ask the same thing to President Trump. What is the end game in Iran? Oh, we have to destroy their nuclear capability and blah, blah, blah. We are right about to acquiesce. And Iran knows it. That's why they're not cutting a deal. And it makes a lot of sense to me. As far as foreign policy is concerned, oh, I understand that they are extremely strategic. What is the end game? What did you do there? You choked off a choke point in the Strait of Hormuz. You made prices go up indefinitely. Prices will not come down. They will come down temporarily. They will go back up. Once you break the ceiling on prices, prices do not come down. So what exactly did you do other than cause global turmoil in markets? I'm sure a lot of people got rich along the way. We've been reporting on that all year long. But to what end? To what end are any of these wars started? And again, oh, absolutely. Yeah, Robert, for sure, man. I would love to have you on the podcast if you want to chat, man. Again, I'm just questioning what the end game is, right? I got you, Robert. We'll definitely add you. And you could join. Just join us in, man. Like for sure. Like join. I'd love to talk to you. Because this isn't a one-way conversation. That's not what I want the show to be about. This show, I don't even want to name it the Shoy Show, right? This is for public discourse. This is for discourse for the world, not for the United States. It's not US centric. This is about, I think, morals, values, and just trying to see things from, I think, a fair lens. I don't want to kill people. So I don't give a shit what any politician has to say in any government around the world. And if you go to travel to these nations, you'll see just how beautiful they and their people are. I've gotten the chance to go to Egypt, to Morocco. I've traveled to, much of Europe. These people are all beautiful. They all have the same thing going on in their lives that we do in ours. I don't even think our politicians forget that. I think that shit has been exterminated from their minds. Like it just doesn't even exist, that possibility that these people actually lead regular lives. They don't see this. And whether they do or they don't, they just don't give a shit. So yes, we have to keep talking about this because these are our neighbors. This is the global populace. And again, life is too short. I'm not going to stand by while some leaders make horrific decisions to upend entire groups of people categorically. I ask again, and I think I ask on behalf of the world, what is the end game, Israel? What is the end game, United States of America? Damn, I had, and honestly, I had really good pictures here. I mean, just I gotta put these up on screen because, like, look at this. Look at this. Ay, ay, ay. I forgot I had these pictures. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine leaving your village because it just got destroyed? Like, ay, ay, ay. Like what's happening in Ukraine? This is an abomination. This is terrible. Ay, ay, ay. Well, that's how it goes, I guess, right? We don't care about these people. There's no compassion. These people weren't living ordinary lives, right? They're all terrorists, right? We don't give a shit about Lebanon. We don't give a shit about the Middle East. We don't care that there's a fuel crisis. We don't care about any of this. I guess that's just how it goes, right? That's what you want me to parrot, right, Israel? That's what you want me to say, right? Anyone that's pro-Israel, right? Super pro-Israel, that's what you want us to say, right? You want us to say, oh yeah, these people don't deserve to live. But we won't. We just won't do that. It's not going to happen because the world has awoken and there's just too much awareness on what's gone on there. All right, next topic. And again, I'm trying to get into like better transitions here. I just don't have a better transition yet. So, All right, perpetual futures. Do we even need exchanges anymore? All right, well, what the hell is a perpetual future, right? Well, a regular futures contract eventually expires. A perpetual future contract does not. So you maintain exposure indefinitely as long as you meet margin requirements. That means you're essentially buying a position outright. And as long as you have enough money in your account, you will not get margin called. So historically, markets had a fairly simple structure, right? You would just buy off the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. That's where Wall Street sits. You had brokers connecting buyers and sellers. So the brokers would actually execute the trades on your behalf in the exchanges, and you would buy from your broker. And they are actually called market makers, where they bring in buyers and sellers together. The investors, which are us, either retail or institutional, we buy the actual ownership in companies. You buy a share of NVIDIA, it goes to your broker, it gets executed on the exchange. That is the traditional model. And now we have perpetual futures. So we are changing the whole realm of finance. And this matters because this is that incremental piece of technology which makes everything faster, which makes costs go down, and which overall enhances, I think, the ownership aspect of your stake. We'll get into that in a second. So once upon a time, people could trade price movements, right? So they could still do that today, of course, right? So you can just buy the price, but not own the asset, right? And now markets are starting to look different. So when you buy a futures contract, you're really buying the price. You are not owning the stock. So if you buy a futures contract of the S&P 500 and you say, I'm buying it at this price in the future, you expect it to meet that price. So for instance, the S&P 500 right now is at $7,500, right? You would probably buy something like futures on SPY, which is a derivative of that. But let's say you buy the S&P 500 at $500. If you buy that, you own the stock. You own an index, but you own the stock, right? So you can buy a stock outright. Let's say you buy futures on that index, or you buy futures on that stock. You're buying a price in the future to be delivered if it meets that price at that point in time. Meaning that today, right now, it's June. Let's say I buy futures for the S&P 500 at $750 in November. So I have until June, until November. I have all of that time, all of that wiggle room for the price to meet $750. If it hits that level, I will make money, break even, depends on, when you buy and sell. But most importantly, I do not own the asset. With perpetual futures, you now don't have a you're still buying the price, but you now don't have a time limit on when you have to exit that position. Because on a futures contract, if your price isn't met within that given time threshold, you will lose your money. Understand? If you understand futures, then it's pretty easy to understand. But this essentially democratizes finance, right? Because it makes it more available to everyone. So again, futures, you're buying a future price on an underlying stock or index, and with a time horizon, right? So futures have an end date. Perpetual futures do not. And that's what's being introduced into the market today. So it's essentially one continuous buy. They're highly liquid, meaning that you can get in and out of the position. And they often offer much higher leverage, meaning that for every dollar that you put down, you could essentially get $5 worth of your money. If you want, look, I learned this at a very young age. I'm 36 now. I've been trading since 17 years old. I traded commodities, futures, stocks, options, you name it, bonds, right? I pretty much hit the whole portfolio. First of all, I think futures are a terrible investment. I just don't think they're a great vehicle, but it's great to see the technology come into the fore. Because you kind of want to buy in perpetuity. You're buying a price in perpetuity, which is great, so long as you have margin. Now, of course, you're going to have an interest cost that you have to incur. I just don't think futures are a good play. If you want to be a long-term investor, to me, you'll be playing in the same arena as the richest of the rich. And that's the good news. The richest of the rich took advantage of a fortunate stock environment. You're talking about George Soros, Carl Icahn, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and they would tell you the same, that they were products of a fortunate environment. We still have that environment today. And that's part and parcel because of this AI revolution. Jump in with both feet, invest, but buy the underlying stock. So that's the disclaimer here, because I can't, in good faith, I can't tell anyone. I would never tell a friend or a family member to buy futures. I've done it. I've lost my money already. I've lost plenty in commodities and in currencies. A lot. I've lost plenty. It is not worth it, right? I've lost, over $1 million doing it. It's just not a good investment. This is gambling. So perpetual futures or futures is gambling. You cannot tell where price is going to be in the future. However, perpetual futures adds another layer, and it's a distinct layer at that, because you don't have an end game. Like you don't have an end point in your price. So if I'm buying futures on NVIDIA stock is $100, and I'm buying a future right now that expires in November, guess what? I have from now until November, until that future is still valuable. And if it doesn't meet my price, then it'll be invaluable and I'll lose money, right? So if I buy a perpetual future, and my strike price is, $175, right? I have an unlimited amount of time for that price to reach $175. Come November, nothing gets executed, right? I don't lose my money come November. And that's the good news about perpetual futures. But now you have to ask yourself, if the market never closes, when do traders actually stop trading? They're not going to stop trading. We are going to 24-hour markets. It's already been announced. Robinhood is extremely close to doing it. I mean, historically, of course, we've had opening and closing bells, and that's when you could expect liquidity in markets. You have after-hour markets now. These natural pauses were built in for many different reasons, but now we're moving to 24-hour inflows and outflows. And that's a tremendous risk, because the market actually closing, one of the reasons for it to actually close, it's actually psychological. You know that the market has a finite amount of time to be open and to be closed in which you can make trades. If the market is perpetually open, can you imagine with a 24-hour news feed how markets might react? We're going to have to reprice volatility in these markets. I mean, a lot of people you could see the outflows in the market. Usually, I mean, it's not always, but usually you see a high level of outflows on Fridays for the last year. Why? That's because everyone's like, I don't know what the hell Trump is going to say on the weekend, so I need to get the hell out of this market. Now, long-term investors, they don't give a shit about that, right? This intraday, intra-week, intra-month volatility. I mean, I used to trade currencies every day. Warren Buffett said that he traded currencies twice a year. Look at the difference. Long-term investing, long-term horizons, that's where you win. You buy quality stocks with value, companies that are growing 20, 30% year over year. Those are the companies that you want to own, just like the companies that you would be happy that you've established in your own life. If you opened up a restaurant and your sales were growing 20, 30% a year, your operating margins are increasing, your gross profit is increasing, your expenses are going down. You see that in one of these companies, you want to own a company like that. And you can do some easy research on Google and find worthwhile companies to buy. However, just buy indexes, you'll be okay. But this is about perpetual futures. Now, there are people saying that this is the financial equivalent of putting a casino in everyone's pocket. Unfortunately, it is. It is, because you're going to be betting on price. You're going to have leverage, meaning that they're going to give you maybe $5 to $1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 50 to 1 leverage. And there are going to be a lot of suckers out there. I don't really like using that word. It's a tough word to use in the markets, but remember, the markets are what? They're what? They are a zero-sum game. There are only winners and losers, and for every winner, there must be a loser, and for every loser, there must be a winner. Do not forget that. The other most important thing that I will say is ignore all the noise, because at the end of the day, one of the, I guess, best pieces of wisdom that I could conjure up right now in investing, 19 years or so, is that a stock can only go up or down. Anything can go up or down just by buying or selling. I don't give a shit what the news is, what the headline is. There's only one way stocks go up and down. And that is because somebody hit buy and somebody hit sell. Do not forget that. Do not sit there and say, it's because Trump said this, it's because of the tariffs, it's because of the war with Iran, the blockade in Cuba, whatever it is. Stocks go up and down. How? By buying and selling. And one of the best pieces of advice that I can give, even though I'm not in the business of giving any advice, comes by way of Benjamin Graham, the intelligent investor. Only buy stocks that if you knew that you could never check the price again, you would be comfortable in doing so. So if, I gave you NVIDIA stock or an index, you just purchased it today, and I told you couldn't check it for the next 10 years. You'd probably be comfortable in doing that, right? What about a perpetual future? If you buy one of these things, you think you'd be able to sleep at night if you just put all of your savings on this type of investment? No, but it's interesting to see the technology, and I like always comparing every additive and incremental piece of technology that we get in the markets. I like even blockchain technology. I like reporting on it, and I like talking about it because this is like F1 technology. If you're familiar with F1, they're coming out with new technology by the day. Faster cars, more ingenuity, more efficiency. And that's what we're doing with these markets. We're not only democratizing them incrementally, but we're also just making the technology all the more better. I mean, personally, I don't know why we're not trading 24 hours a day already. Like, to me, it's like, I don't know why we don't have a chip in our heads right now that's like doing all the work that we do for us. I don't even know why I even have a job. I'm an IT project manager. I'm like, wow, how has AI not replaced me already? They already have. My jobs just haven't, my employers they're not privy enough to it. Anyway, don't fire me. Not yet. I need a few more years. So both arguments deserve consideration. This is innovation, and it is going to do good for markets because, again, it's just another market product. I don't want a due date on my contract. Some people do. That's why you would just buy futures, regular futures. But now this is giving you the ability to have unlimited runway. If you truly believe that stocks will go up in the future, which has been the directional move, right? Stocks go up incrementally into the future. You just have to pull up a stock chart for that, right? Look at the S&P 500. If you believe that markets will go up gradually into the future, then why on earth would you buy a futures contract that has an expiry date? You might as well buy perpetual futures. So this gives you another option. Another aspect of this is not just the technology, but human behavior. And if you are really interested in markets, I would just read every finance book that you can out there. I've read a ton of them already. I read every day. I try to read a book every week. Not just finance though. I love novels. I just read a physical book every week. Try to read books on like the psychology of money. Try to read books on behavioral psychology. And that goes not only for markets, but it'll tell you that herd think, right? Herd, H-E-R-D. It'll tell you how the masses think, right? That goes from everything from trends that you see on TV to how we think about markets, right? And that's why you'll see upsurges, you'll see melt-ups in the market. At the same time, you'll see, these cataclysmic downfalls. And when you see them, you want to understand, okay, what is the market psychology behind this, right? Is this herd buying? Is this herd selling? And why does it occur? Is it because interest rates went up? Is it because Trump said something? No, it's because there's a confluence of factors, right? It's people buying and selling at the end of the day, first and foremost. But yes, it is the news. It is interest rates. It is jobs. It is inflation. You have to take all of these things into account. However, most importantly, you kind of want to understand, how do people think, right? When does the panic buying or panic selling occur? And there is panic buying, because remember, a lot of these investment managers with billions of dollars, they have to, garner their returns. So usually you'll see a lot of buying, late December, because they're trying to, boost their portfolios before the next year, because they're judged on an annual basis. And there's going to be profit taking. There's also going to be tax loss harvesting. They're trying to take losses so that there's less of a capital gains tax. So you just want to understand like what drives the masses to buy and sell. And these books are great. Just Google a whole bunch of behavioral psychology books and actually just go to the library. There's a ton of books over there. I go to the library. I buy books all the time, but I only buy books for cheap. Okay. I don't buy no expensive books unless I go to a bookstore. Anyway, but when the barrier to taking risk approaches zero, because in this case, you do have risk in a perpetual future. And what is that risk? The risk is that you go down to zero, right? So whatever your purchase price is minus, all the way down to zero, that's your loss. That's your potential loss. So if you buy a perpetual future contract for 500, right? Let's just be simple here. Let's say $500 is all you risk. You can lose the $500. Now you can gain in perpetuity with perpetual futures. But again, if you believe that directionally the markets will go up, and they do, and you buy a perpetual future, which has no end date, it's just another very interesting market product. The human side of this is what happens to the people taking the risk, right? Because there's a whole bunch of losers out there. So, is this good for quote unquote democratizing finance? We can't say, but I think the more diversity that we have in the product offering, I think the better for investors. And by the way, one thing I forgot to say earlier was the only way that you can actually ever understand this. I myself have never, I don't even know if perpetual futures, they're not ubiquitous at this point, right? Not everyone has them, but perpetual futures, once they become available and accessible to everyone on multiple different platforms, the only way you're going to understand how they work is by buying them, unfortunately, not in a test account. Unfortunately, that's just the way I've learned. You want to get into options, you got to trade options. You want to get into currencies, you got to trade currencies, futures, whatever it is. You're not going to learn until you actually put real money at risk. I traded with paper money accounts for years until I actually lost my shirt 10 times over, more than that. in currencies did I actually quit. But you got to learn. That's the only way you're going to learn. All right, next topic. We are like getting into it. And this topic's about to hit the fan over here. And I love this, but at the same time, we've got to have some compassion, man. So this topic is still, it was, and it still is one of the biggest political issues in America. And Trump, he might have won the damn race on this. And, you know, even if you don't like Trump, right? I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not anti-anyone. But I just don't, you know, unfortunately, you know, it's sad to say, I just don't think he's a good person. I just don't. I think he's done too much. He's done way too much. What he did with ICE, killing Americans, imprisoning them. I mean, I just can't. I can't. The constant support of Israel, I can't with these politicians. I can't. I just can't do it. So no, I do not like them. Stand for something, have a backbone, or get the fuck out of politics and get out of our government. I mean, and I just don't understand, like, all of the corruption. I just don't understand. What befuddles me, what like perplexes me so much is, like, you are a fucking politician. You're already, like, the influence and power that you hold is so rich. It's so rich. It's like, why can't you wait until you get out of office, go into private markets, and then go become a multimillionaire? Like, you do realize, like, any one of our politicians, once you become a politician, it's like the floodgates open. But why be corrupt? Why not do the right thing for your tenure? And then, you know, go find your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Just wait. Do right by your citizens. Do right by the world. And then go get rich. Anybody that's going to go private right now, Mayor Eric Adams just left New York City, right? He's going private. People are going to be paying consulting fees. I don't think he would take less than $25,000, maybe $50,000 for a speaking event today. And he was accused of a ton of corruption charges. It's like what's going on over here, right? Wasn't the New York Attorney General, wasn't she pressured into dropping cases against him? I actually met the guy, by the way, but that doesn't mean shit. It's just like, dude, I mean, if you believe these allegations, why would you? Anyway, so this is one of the biggest topics, transgender athletes. And I love this because I got a question for the audience, man. I mean, and it's a really easy one. Did we get hoodwinked? Because that's how I feel. I mean, seriously. Do you know how many transgender athletes are in the NCAA? How many do you think? So let me give you a number here, right? Out of 500,000 athletes, out of 500,000 out of 500,000 NCAA athletes, we're just going to talk about the NCAA because they were definitely like front and center here. Out of 500,000 athletes, 500,000 athletes, how many do you think were listed as transgender, which were openly transgender? And by the way, most people can tell, I think, right? How many do you think? Ten. Look, I'm not even, if you ask me casually, and like I've talked to my friends, everyone has talked about this subject. Men and women sports, right? And Trump has said it over and over and over again. And by the way, why did we talk about Trump? Because, of course, he ran on this. But I think we got hoodwinked. And this is from, I also think we got hoodwinked before as well. But hate him or love him, he ran a brilliant campaign. Him, Susie Wiles, Elon Musk's money, everyone involved, they ran a brilliant campaign. And that I admire about Trump, because it truly was. I mean, all 3 times that he ran, brilliant campaigns. No matter what he said, the mudslinging, right? All of the vile and harsh words statements he made. he ran a brilliant campaign. I will not deny that. I don't think anyone can. And he won twice. I mean, amazing, right? But one thing that he kept calling out was men and women's sports, right? I don't want a man. Do you want LeBron? Do you want LeBron in the WNBA? He's going to destroy the WNBA. There would be no WNBA. Oh, why don't you go put women? Why don't you go put female basketball players in the NBA? It's like, oh, calm down. Calm down. And of course, for all of the parents, I don't want, my daughter competing with, against 3 other girls. And then let's say it was a transgender woman. I mean, would I give a shit? Not necessarily. Because I don't really give a shit if she wins or not. I just want her to compete and to have fun. Anyway, let's get back to the point here. I'm asking us, did we get hoodwinked? Hell yeah, we did. Absolutely we did. Less than 10 transgender athletes out of 500,000? I mean, are you serious? You're going to tell me that Donald Trump and company did not trick us? That's this fear-mongering tactic. The men are going to take over the women's sports. The women are going to take over the men's sports. And if you listened to the political campaigns, if you followed them, the media coverage was incessant. This was at the center of social media. I mean, you probably assumed, wrongfully, of course, like I did, that there was like thousands of transgender athletes across the world. I mean, there are 10 in the NCAA, 10. So what was this, right? This was, hey, you should worry about this, A. B, it's a slippery slope. That's what they're doing. Hey, this is a fucking problem. That's how you rile people up, right? Hey, men and women's sports, it's crazy, right? And listen, I mean, everyone I spoke to in my life, everyone was like, yeah, like we can't have that. Right? Most people are like, yeah, we can't have that. I don't want my daughter competing against a dude. That's how people work. Listen, that's common parlance. That's how we talk, right? In person. And I'm not going to blame a parent for not liking that dynamic. They have every right to say whatever the fuck they want. It's their kid. But what we're talking about is how we were manipulated. We were taken advantage of. We were told something. We were fed this propaganda, if you will, this message, and we were told this is the truth, and you should worry about it. And if you don't do something about it, guess what? We're gonna have a ton of men and women's sports. I mean, seriously, I'm telling you right now that there are 10 transgender people in the NCAA. In a collective of 500,000, 500,000. Do you know what that amounts to? 0.002%. That's fucking nothing. Okay? That's like if you saw an ant in your house and you were like, oh shit, like you're not gonna be like, I got ants, right? You're just gonna be like, all right, let me get this ant out of here, and then let me see if I got any more ants. The scale matters here. We were questioning biology, puberty, competitive advantage. And those are still legitimate questions, but again, what numbers are we talking? The way the politicians were speaking to us was that this was a damning concern. That this was pretty much the only thing that we should care about. It was one of the primary things I heard Donald Trump speak about. He said it in almost every speech. Why? Because he's a fucking genius. Oh yeah, he knew exactly what he was doing. But did the potential scale of the debate match the scale of the issue? I mean, like, to them, it did, because what they were doing was fear mongering. They were trying to make us worry so much that if we didn't do something about this, you know what people were saying on the campaign trail? They were saying, we got to vote for Donald Trump. He needs to save America. Because if we don't, America's going to go to shit, right? That's pretty much what we kept saying. But one question is whether sports should have sex-based categories. The other question is why this issue became one of the most discussed topics in American politics. And why did our candidate at the time for president of the United States and former president, why did he make this such a big deal? Because he knew that it would go to the core. He knew that it would be something that we cared about. Because I think most people would reject the idea. Most people would say, no, we have segregated sports for this long. I don't know that we should necessarily have a world where we should enmesh both sexes. However, we could one day. We could absolutely have co-op sports. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way that the politician framed it, the way that Donald Trump went about saying it, was extremely strategic. It was a spectacle to watch. So yes, we got hoodwinked. Can a policy affect very few people and still matter nationally? Absolutely. But then another question follows. When does a legitimate concern become a political symbol? When Donald Trump or any other politician says it is, because most of the other politicians around him, especially the Trump loyalists, are just parroting him. Were voters actually responding to statistics? Hell to the no. And he knew that that would happen. Why? Because no one's going to check statistics. As I told you earlier, I'm going to watch the fucking Knicks game later, because that's what's on my mind. Not the destruction of Lebanon or the fact that we only have 10 transgender athletes in a pool of 500,000. We were taken advantage of because they know that we have our lives to live, and we're just going to listen to a soundbite or read a headline and go on about our day. Oh, did you hear Trump said this? Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, we shouldn't have men and women's sports. That's crazy. We can't do that. That's why you have males and females. People hold on to what they heard or what they saw, and they make their decisions. Do you blame them? I don't. I don't need you to sit there and start Googling shit. It's good to be an informed voter. It's good to be an informed citizen, but I'm not going to hold anything against you. Live your life, man. You've got plenty to do, plenty to see. We were responding to stories, not to the statistics. So now the question is, if there are fewer than 10 athletes, fewer than 10 transgender athletes involved, do you think this should be a defining issue of multiple election cycles? Because now, at some point, you got to see the facts. I'm not blaming anyone for voting because of something they heard or something they saw. Most people are not going to fact check anything. I'm not blaming you for that. But at some point, you got to realize that, hey, this is really a non-issue. And that's what we're pointing to today. Fewer than 10? Do you really give a shit? How many people did they actually affect? Now, of course, you're going to have that one caveat there, right? That one little elephant in the room where people are going to say, it's a slippery slope, right? If you let transgenders in, if you let them in the field of play, then, one day it's going to be all transgender and the men are going to kill the women and the women are going to kill the men, Hunger Games style. I don't fucking know. But they're going to say whatever they have to say to win elections. These guys are trying to win a campaign. They don't give a shit who stands in their way. Step on all the little people to the top. That's how they are. You think Trump gives a shit about anyone around him until he wins? This guy is as cavalier as they come. But I don't think that people ask questions like this often enough. And even when they do run into the facts, do they ignore them? Because regardless of where you stand on the policy, understanding why certain issues dominate national attention, that's part of understanding politics itself. You have to understand how the machine works, right? Okay, why is this a national story right now? Why is this so relevant? Oil, prices, gold, Bitcoin, transgenders. Why is this a national headline? Why are they displaying this to me, conveying this information to me? I'm not saying that you should be a complete cynic, but we should be asking these questions. And I think if we all did just a little research on transgenders in sports specifically, we probably would have noticed that, hey man, this is a non-issue. I really don't give a shit. And if one of these transgender athletes were to come into contact with one of my children, I mean, what I have to say on transgenderism is, whether you're religious or not, let's just put God aside for a second. And I am, but let's just put God aside for a second. Whether you're religious or not, if you think that these people are wrong for being transgender, okay. Have you ever been wrong? Do you believe in sin? Have you ever sinned? Have you ever been misguided or misled? Confused? I have. Do you want people to burn you at the stake? So again, I think we just have to have a little compassion. And as far as this is concerned, I think we have to do just a little fact checking. I mean, we could have Googled this shit in 5 seconds and been like, what the fuck is Trump in arms about? I mean, this guy's outrageous. Now, I actually knew, that the numbers were low. I did not know that they were this low. And the other thing that was escaping me is I didn't just think about the NCAA, right? 10 out of 500,000 people, 10. I never Googled this, right? I was thinking about the Olympics. I was thinking about professional sports. I was thinking about younger than the NCAA during your adolescence. So I didn't really think just the NCAA. Again, there's no blame to go around here. The blame really has to go on the politicians, because this was a strategy. This was their tactics in order to get elected. All right, let's get to the next topic. Damn, I didn't even show you guys photos. Shit. Let me just show you some more photos. I didn't even switch photos over here. All right, here are some more photos of transgender athletes. Can you tell which one is transgender? No, you can't. One is just whiter than the other. That's it. All right. Here's a photo of the USA soccer team. None of them are transgender. Got you. You see what I'm saying? That's what the politicians do to you, right? Hey, look, one of them is transgender. Actually, none of them are transgender. But I just had to show you a bunch of women in the sport, Here's a guy. He's not transgender, and he's got no problem with you. But if you got a problem with him, he could have a problem with you, and he's a man. You can be mad at him? Oh, he's transgender. If I told you he's transgender, you might feel some type of way. That's how they got us thinking over here. They got our minds twisted. We're spinning in circles over here because these politicians are crazy. It's not your fault. It's their fault. Here's this woman. She's not transgender either. But guess what? She's coming to take your place, take your gold. Yeah, that's right. Transgender athletes coming to steal our place. She's not transgender. She could just jump really high. I think that's what she's doing. These are stock photos. No, they're not, but Look, a swimming event. You happy about this? Bunch of transgenders in here. Actually, the chances of somebody being transgender in there is quite slim, because we just looked at the numbers. 10 out of 500,000. But this is what they want you to feel. They want you to feel that anger and that spirit so that you say, I can't stand these politicians. They're putting transgenders in our sports. They're not giving my daughter a chance. That's how it works. And then they win. I mean, take a look at these. Guess what? None of them are transgender. They're just a bunch of, good-looking athletes, and they're all women. Aren't you happy? You probably are. If you're a man, you probably are. You're probably looking at them and saying, hey, look, they're hot. Hey, it's your prerogative. You do what you want. You say what you want, Live your life, baby. But just don't sit here and be like, oh, they're transgender. They're going to take over the world. I mean, that doesn't make sense, but that's what our politicians want us to believe. Get the transgender out of sports. You know what? You want a transgender? You can't have one because none of these are transgender women. You want one? Go to Pornhub. What can I tell you? You know what I'm saying? All right. So next topic. I gotta switch topic again. I gotta come up with a better transition. I'm just like, all right, next topic. It's such a hard transition. Like I'm going to take a shit or something. All right, next topic. Data centers, baby. We got to talk about this. Guys, I can't say it enough. Take your money and invest it. Buy indexes. Everything is going to be touched. Every sector is going to be touched. Utilities, industrials, energy, technology, everything will be hit. We can become extremely rich, and it starts with data centers. Everyone talks about AI. This is one of those components, and this sits at the center of all of it. Nobody's talking about the buildings here. Well, there are people talking about the buildings. Data center is a facility filled with servers, networking equipment, and storage systems. This precedes AI. We had this way before artificial intelligence. You needed this the moment you had a large company. You need a data center. It doesn't even need to be that large of a company. When you use cloud computing, storage in the cloud, you stream videos, you're on YouTube, you search online, you interact with AI models, whatever you're doing, that work is happening somewhere. It's not floating in the sky, even though we call it the cloud. That cloud is a building. It points back to a building. So you're hitting a satellite, you're going back to a building. And that building is the data center. And we're going to need a ton of those. And we're going to need a ton of electricity that goes along with it. So power, cooling, infrastructure, that's the foundation. If you want to buy some ETFs, Google some ETFs, buy it. Buy these ETFs, buy the industrial ETF XLI. You can buy AIPO. I believe 50% for any stock to be eligible to be placed in that index, I think they have to have 50% of their revenues come from AI. They have to have 50% of AI generated revenues, AIPO. I'm an owner of that. Or just do yourself one better. Just buy the S&P 500. Go buy a derivative of it. It's cheaper. You can buy SPYM. Just buy SPYM, call it a day. Put your head on your pillow, sleep at night, throw all your money at it. We're going to build castles to the sky. Not only literally, but figuratively. We are going to build castles to the sky. And that's actually terminology that comes from the investment world, in case you're not privy to it, which is you want stocks that have that, that little oomph, those animal spirits. They're capable of people blowing them up, kind of meme-ish. You can get that same type of, there's another term that they use, which are called animal spirits. You can get that buzz in the markets, which can have a stock, propel a stock parabolically, can shoot it up into the air. And you have stocks like this that are building out these data centers like GE Vernova, right? We'll take you to GE Vernova right now. Year to date, look at that. Look at that parabolic move. Year to date, up 41%. Shoots from $817 in the beginning of April, to April 23rd. Shoots from $815 to $1,149. Beginning of the year, it's up 41%. Nvidia, Micron, all of these stocks. So you want to buy companies that have the ability to have those animal spirits. Like, again, you build castles in the sky, which means that they have the capability of moving parabolically. Like you see what's happening with Micron stock, right? Now this is a memory stock, but you see what's happening with Micron, right? I mean, look at Micron stock. Parabolic move. It was $321 in April. It's sitting at $1,079. Year to date, it's up 242%. Of course, that's because there's incredible demand for their memory chips, and there's a thesis here that they fit into, right? They also have the revenues. This is a quality stock. It's also a value stock. I think they're trading at like 37 times earnings. They're not that expensive. However, right now they have that magic about them. And I believe that data centers will be at the heart of all of this. So yes, you can buy the infrastructure trade. That's what we're talking about today. Now, this is the foundation. We're talking about building out the bedrock here. Older data centers, they were already significant energy consumers. We're already getting more efficient with our technology when it comes to energy. That's another, line item that you should watch in this AI thesis, because if prices for things come down, then there is going to be less purchasing, right? Less AI capex. However, AI data centers are taking that demand to the next level. The International Energy Agency estimates that global electricity demand from data centers could more than double by 2030. Did you hear that? Global demand is going to double from 2025, it's 2026, of course, but this came out in 2025, from 2025 to 2030. So what does that mean? I mean, if the demand doubles, then our infrastructure has to double, our energy has to double, everything that is an input into our electric grids, into creating this type of compute has to double. Just buy the S&P 500, y'all. Like, you're going to get rich and you can be a billionaire with a B. I'm not talking about millionaire. We start with millions, and by the way, I forgot to say this earlier. You want to play around with futures and gambling and this and that. You want to do that? You do that after you have $2 million in the bank. And $2 million is a very important number, because $2 million invested in the markets can get you the benchmark rate of 10%. And that's enough to live off of. Way more than enough. $200,000 a year. So you should be okay. When you get $2 million, then you can start having fuck you money or playing around with your money. Until that day happens, you do not invest in anything else other than indexes. And I am adamant about that. Don't sit here and be on DraftKings, FanDuel, any of these apps, Polymarket. Don't play with Bitcoin. Do not even touch crypto. You are not a multimillionaire yet. You can be. And what I like to tell my friends and my family is, you may not be able to afford a Ferrari, but you can buy the Ferraris of the stock market. So do that. Buy NVIDIA, buy Microsoft once upon a time, buy Micron, just buy indexes. If I could tell you, hey, you could own 500 of the best companies in the world, in the most efficient, the best market, just most efficient, most liquid market, most stable market, financial market in the world. Hey, that's the S&P 500. Or you could take that money and bet your money on the Knicks. How many of my friends do you think would bet on the Knicks? It's like, hey, you could own 500 of the best companies in the world, all the technology around you, Apple, Microsoft, Nike, every company you could think of. You can own all of them. Or would you rather bet on the Knicks? They're like, yeah, I'd rather bet on the Knicks. And actually, I have been imploring my friends for years to invest in the stock market, and they're still betting on the Knicks. Like, they're still gambling. They still haven't invested. Many of my friends have, my friends and family, but again, I think we're in a very good place. Like, we had the Industrial Revolution, we had the internet come into the fore, right? The World Wide Web. These were parabolic moves. These were changes in humanity, really. And the stock market enables us to connect money to innovation. To fund all of this technology, we do so with our dollars. We have the ability for this transformational revolution. We have the ability to profit from it. Do not miss the boat. Invest in infrastructure, invest in the S&P 500. I'm doing it. All of my money is invested. I do not have a savings account. All of my money is in the market. Make sure you have enough money so that you can absorb downtrends, but invest in the stock market, invest in the S&P 500. Don't touch anything else. Don't listen to anyone else. It's not that I'm right on the matter. Just do a little homework, right? Look at indexes, look at stocks. I just finished reading A Random Walk Down Wall Street. The synthesis of that book was that in the long run, and they throw the evidence at you every which way, in the long run, a stock picker will not beat out index funds. Period. Full stop. You will not beat out index funds. So don't try it. The International Energy Agency estimates that global electricity demand from data centers alone could more than double by 2030. So invest in data centers. You want to buy indexes that follow these themes? You can. You can buy industrials, you can buy energy, you can buy utilities. But think about that. Entire utility systems are now being asked to prepare for AI growth. We are going to live in a whole new world, baby. Aladdin. You remember Aladdin and Jasmine? This is a whole new world and it's coming. Now, of course, who gets the power when everyone wants the power? Because when a major data center arrives, somebody has to build transmission lines. You have to upgrade substations. You have to expand generating capacity. And eventually somebody pays. Now, who is that? Who's going to be doing that? Is that the companies, the utilities, the customers? Who absorbs the cost? Now, this is more of an externality question, right? And there are laws right now that are being legislated for all of these hyperscalers, all of these companies, Oracle, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon. Hey, you're going to be soaking up all of this electricity. You're going to be raising the cost. People are just going to pay this passively. We're going to notice our bills going up, but who are we really going to complain to? So they're trying to pass legislation right now that all of these major companies, which of course make billions of dollars in profits, that they should be taking on their fair share of the burden, considering that they're the ones that are creating the electricity demand. And that makes sense to me. So when $1 trillion company builds a facility in your area, and there have been protests nationwide, they've been stopping data center buildouts. People do not want them in their neighborhoods. What should the local community receive in return? It's a very interesting question. Jobs, tax revenue, infrastructure improvements. I mean, is this something that you want to live next to? And what's it really creating? These data centers, they're largely uninhabited. People don't really work in there. We're not going to get lower electricity costs as a result. But of course, data centers, they stand to benefit. The hyperscalers stand to benefit. Shouldn't they be sharing with us some of these proceeds? The biggest bottleneck now, it's not going to be chips. We've already had bottlenecks in the chip value supply chain. If you want to buy that ETF, that's going to be SMH, semiconductor ETF. But if AI demand continues growing at this pace, it's going to be data centers. The biggest bottleneck is going to be energy, data centers, token creation. That's where we're getting to here. That's why no matter what happens, I was an investor in Oracle. I should have kept the stock. No matter what happens in this economy, we cannot stop building out data centers. Our world has already succumbed to running on them. We cannot possibly defer data center and AI investment. It's just not going to happen. So from here on out, invest in the S&P 500. You will own a piece of all of these companies. It will make you rich. We cannot live without data centers. It's just not going to happen. All of the equipment that has to go into this, the labor, the construction, breaking ground, this is not going to go away. There are too many components, the server racks, the processors, the liquid cooling. There's just too much equipment that needs to be purchased. We're talking about trillions of dollars of capex, trillions. And it's not going to stop because we are going to have insatiable demand. The only thing that could possibly usurp this part of the AI thesis is if we become more efficient with our technology, which if history tells you anything, we will. But what all of the experts are saying, and I believe this, it's still not going to be enough. Yes, we will have more efficient chips. Yes, we will have more efficient GPUs, CPUs, computers, cooling equipment. Everything will become more efficient. It will get better as time goes on. Technology will always evolve. However, if a company is going to defer their CapEx spending, they're already behind. That's why Oracle has negative free cash flow. They have spent all of their money and then borrowed money in the public markets to fund out these data center build outs. And by the way, this is a foray into data centers for them because they were largely supplying infrastructure, but not necessarily building out data centers for people. They were managing them, not building them. Now they're building them because they understand the level and the magnitude of this AI thesis. All right, y'all, we're going to end it there. I got a couple more topics, but we're going to end it there. Thank you for joining. I will reach out to Ronan. I'll definitely reach out to you, man. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Thanks for watching.